In this video, we're going to talk about Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah translates into the head of the year. Rosh, head, Hashanah, the year. Well, let's go to the Bible. Exodus 12. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, "This month is to be for you the first month of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household." We know from the passage exactly when this occurred. This occurs in the first month of the year, the only year. There's not two calendars. There are not two calendars that God references in the Bible. You guys see multiple times in the Bible that God says on the such and such day of the such and such month. He doesn't say on the such and such day of the Exodus month, and then the such and such day of the creation month. He doesn't do that. He never references two calendars. Ever, ever, ever. Nor does he tell you to observe a Rosh Hashanah. He does not tell you to set up a new year. He does not tell you, oh, here are the traditional foods that you're going to fix. Ever. Except for unleavened bread and the sacrificial lamb during Passover, and leavened bread during the Festival of Weeks. Other than that, he doesn't say eat honey and apples, eat pastries and honey. He doesn't say any of that. All of this is an attempt to indulge flesh and to observe holidays according to the way that the world does. It is a prostitution to the world. If you've been observing God's holy days, you know when they occur. You know the way that God has told you to observe them. It has nothing to do with the flesh. In fact, God has not told you to set aside the covenant of circumcision to go indulge your flesh. Actually, what he has said is that your new moon festivals and your feast days have become a burden to me. They are a stench to me. Because what people are doing is celebrating these things to themselves. What is being observed right now? What is going to be observed tonight by counterfeit Christians and counterfeit Jews all around the world is a stench to God. What these people did in Reformed Judaism is defer to rabbis. And yet Jesus told you don't call anyone rabbi. God has already told you what he wants you to observe and how he wants you to observe it. He's established his calendar. Let me tell you where this came from. There's one calendar in the Bible. Reformed Judaism added an additional calendar. And then they refer to the two calendars as the Exodus calendar and the creation calendar. And they claim that the world was created according to this creation calendar. And that's their justification for adding the calendar. God didn't tell them to do that. They've also added leap years and different numbers of days, an extra month during the leap year. And the reason they've done this is because they prostituted God's calendar. What God established, they prostituted it to the calendar of the harlot Catholic Church that is used in the world, to the Gregorian calendar, so that they could be like the rest of the world. God's Festival of Trumpets, which they are not even celebrating on the correct day. They don't even know when the correct day is because they've messed with his calendar so much. But his Festival of Trumpets has nothing to do with a worldly holiday of New Year. They are turning his Festival of Trumpets into a pagan holiday, and you know exactly how this is celebrated in the world. But if you look at what you're supposed to be doing, if you understand and you've been observing new moon, you know that that's a Sabbath. So no food preparation should be taking place at this time. On Sabbath, you'd be entering his rest. I don't know about you, but I'm not planning a party on Sabbath. That's not what I'm doing. I mean, to say nothing of the fact that new moon is not the dark moon. The new moon is the crescent, when the crescent shows up. But you know, the word prophesied that God's holy days and his new moons were going to be lost. And then you see that in the end, in the third temple, they are reinstituted. And so right now in this third temple, which is us, He has been reinstituting his calendar for those who care. But look at what they're doing. This could not be the head of God's month because they're not even basing it on the moon, the faithful witness in the sky that God established in order for us to be able to observe correctly. Tonight does begin a Sabbath, actually. It begins the Sabbath of the 29th day of his month. They're not going to have any regard for any of this. They don't care. They're delusional. It's the same thing that counterfeit Christianity does. They set up this holiday, this worldly holiday of Christmas, and they think it's going to be to their credit. None of this will be to your credit. It will be to your condemnation if this is what you're doing. Leviticus 23, verse 23, the Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, on the first day of the 7th month, you are to have a day of Sabbath rest, a sacred assembly commemorated with trumpet blast. Do no regular work, but present a food offering to the Lord. So actually, it's implied here that this is a Sabbath. You should already know that if you're observing God's new moon, because this is the first day of the month, so it's the new moon. And the first day of the month, every new moon is going to be a day of rest. So you should already know that. And you should already be gearing up to have planned your meals ahead of time so that you can enter into God's rest. What about this says party to you? What about this says New Year to you? Nothing. On the first day of the 7th month, you are to have a day of Sabbath rest, a sacred assembly commemorated with trumpet blasts. Nothing about that says party to me. And yet that's what people will be doing. And I want to remind you that October 7th of last year was also supposed to be a Sabbath, supposedly, according to what they've established, right? According to what they've distorted, and supposedly was the last day of the Festival of Tabernacles. Well, what are you supposed to be doing on the last day of the Festival of Tabernacles? Well, native-born Israelites should be essentially camping out in temporary structures. Not at a rave, camping out in temporary structures for 7 days. Native-born Israelites, the ones saying that they're the chosen people. Leviticus 23, verse 42. Live in temporary shelters for 7 days. All native-born Israelites are to live in such shelters, so your descendants will know that I had the Israelites live in temporary shelters when I brought them out of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. I guess I should have read the entire passage. I'm going to go back in the passage because it starts in verse 33. And I'm going to show you that this should have been a Sabbath for them. Not to mention that October 7th was a Saturday, and they claim that Saturday is their Sabbath anyway. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, on the 15th day of the 7th month, the Lord's Festival of Tabernacles begins, and it lasts for 7 days. The first day is a sacred assembly. Do no regular work. For 7 days, present a food offering to the Lord. And on the 8th day, hold a sacred assembly and present a food offering to the Lord. It is the closing special assembly. Do no regular work. On this 8th day, according to the calendar that they're claiming, because it actually wasn't the Festival of Tabernacles, but according to what they were claiming, this was the final day of that assembly, of the Festival of Tabernacles, a day in which they should have been assembling and doing no regular work. But they were at what they call a music festival, which, if you look into that music festival, had all kinds of, statues of like false gods. Not that they should have been at a mild music festival anyway. That's not what you're commanded to do. But it's even more detestable. God's going to bring judgment, guys. He's going to bring judgment. This is disgusting. It is a stench. He says so in his word. What is being taught in counterfeit Judaism and this counterfeit idea of messianic Christianity? What is messianic Christianity? When you call yourself a Christian, it's implied that you believe in the Messiah, that you believe Jesus was the Messiah. What is this new denomination or group that thinks they're special that call themselves messianic Christians? It's ridiculous. What I hear is you're adding something to what is very simple in the word. Leave it alone. Why do you feel the need to do that? God didn't say reform. He said return. Return to his word. Return to his truth. And stop adding. Stop trying to make your own thing. Stop deferring to people who don't accept the Messiah, who Paul already told you are loved on account of the patriarchs, but are enemies as far as the gospel is concerned. Why do people who call themselves Christians keep deferring to a group of people who have not accepted Christ to tell them what their gospel is? Return to the word. There is one calendar. That calendar is based on the faithful witness in the sky, as is written in the Psalms. The festivals are in the word. Study them. Stop listening to other people when you've been told that in the word that truth is going to be thrown down, that no one will be speaking the truth. Most of you are not even discerning the people you're listening to on YouTube. You're not even discerning them. You just kind of, oh, this video, let me see, this looks good. Oh, that person's good looking. They'll be nice to look at for the next 10 minutes. Let's see if they entertained me. Most of you are not even looking for the truth. So ask yourself the question, have you discerned me? Have you gone to God and asked him if what I'm speaking is the truth? Are these other people leading you back to God? Are they telling you to do that? Or do they lead you to them? Go discern this message with God. Go ask him if I am his shepherd. Because you have no business listening to anyone who does not belong to him, who is not serving him. And you need to understand the times. You need to know that no one is speaking the truth.